Okay, to continue with my memories of secondary school, gonna try and cover the year from year 4 now through to the end of the 5th year. Might just glance into the 6th year. Back to teachers. Our English teacher in about year 4 and 5 was a very interesting guy. His name was Sheen, Mr. Sheen. He was an intellectual type, and certainly he knew his onions when it came to literature. But he had obviously been earmarked by the establishment at the school to be the person to try to unravel this amazing subject of sexual education. And it was quite amusing listening to him teach us about the birds and the bees. There was also into the 5th year, drugs that appeared in school. Was almost topical at the time, particularly with the music changing. And I can always recall one particular lesson when these two girls, Pauline and Madeline Severs and Pauline Wood, came into class one morning, and they were hysterical for the duration, really. Not the full lesson, because they were taken out, but it was absolutely clear that they were under the influence of something, and it later transpired that it was LSD, and they had to be removed from the classroom because they were beyond control, and Mr. Sheen had to handle that. Okay, moving on to other teachers. I always remember my culture, my arts subjects. In art itself, we had a teacher who, from time to time, wanted us to learn other skills, and we had a carving task to perform. And I was absolutely bored silly with this art and crafts. And I can remember spending sort of an hour and a half each week with a little piece of wood. And I was trying to carve it into a face. And I never got anywhere near that. It was, and I spent most of the time doing nothing. I went one better when it came to metalwork. In metalwork, which I learned from, I think, the 5th form onwards, we had a teacher called Rodwell, who also had a son at the school who was in our class, which added a little bit to the mischief. Anyway, after a while, it was always on Friday afternoons, and after a while, I became absent on frequent occasions. And it got to the point where it came to Friday lunchtime, and I went home. And as I may have said before, my father was at home for lunch, and so there was always a good reason to go home. I didn't have school lunches, and I persuaded my father that, in the interest of my sanity, that I ought to stay at home every Friday afternoon and watch the horse racing, rather than go back to school to have metalwork. And so I went for months not attending. And then I remember I attended one afternoon, and the teacher had a wry smile and made a comment that got the whole class in fits about my attendance. Moving on, our sports teacher was Mr. Watts. He certainly helped me in my pursuit of enjoyment at football. We actually reached the final of the school's cup in the area around Guildford, the Thompson Cup. It was for 16-year-olds. Lost 2-1 in the final, I can remember. And I was a bit poorly. I shouldn't have played really, but I was so determined to play. And I had a sore throat and a few other things. And I missed a sitter in the last 5 minutes, which could have levelled the match. Some of my colleagues never let me forget that. And also, one brief word about Mr. Fitzgerald. He was a history teacher that we had because Priestley left, and he was getting on in years. And I remember in one of his classes, we were dreadful in his class because he was getting very old and ponderous. We sat at the back and basically didn't take a blind bit of notice of what he had to say. And then on this one particular day, we managed to steal some calcium from the chemistry lab, and a couple of students started putting calcium in the inkwells. Well, of course, this reacted with the inkwells, and they started frothing up like a volcano, and he went absolutely crazy. Another day that's really not particularly funny, although at the time it appeared to be extremely funny, was when he became ill in the class, and we were continuing being really out of order, and he was slumped over his desk, and after a few minutes one of the girls went out to the area where the sort of secretarial people worked, and asked them to come to the class, and within minutes an ambulance had arrived and took him off to hospital, and we later found out that he died of a heart attack. So that's certainly something that I wasn't very proud of. So that sums up really the teachers. There will be another little part that will concentrate on the topics of sex, drugs, and violence. Okay, I'll set that up for a third video.